I'm Teisha with Shalom TV's news update for Wednesday, February the 19th, 2014. Israel's Army radio reports that the United States will ask Israel for a partial settlement freeze after U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry presents his framework deal, which is expected by the end of March or April. The report cites U.S. officials involved in the current peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians, saying that the White House will reportedly ask for the freeze in construction of isolated West Bank settlements, those outside of the large settlement blocks. Army radio said there was no official response to this report yet from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The current deadline for the peace negotiations is April the 29th, and Secretary of State Kerry is expected to present the framework deal before the deadline in order to extend negotiations. The deal has been discussed with both the Israeli and Palestinian sides in talks with U.S. peace envoy Martin Indyk, as well as with Secretary of State Kerry, who has been meeting with the negotiating teams of both sides in Washington and earlier this month in Munich. And tonight, the Secretary of State is meeting about the framework deal with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas in Paris.
But the seeds of hate.
Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Ron Prosor, has become the first Israeli diplomat to chair the elections of the UN Human Rights Committee. Yesterday, Prosor was unanimously elected to preside over the UNHRC elections by representatives of the 170 countries, becoming the first Israeli to hold that position. Prosor called this a great honor and said the central role Israel plays to advance human rights around the world is the real answer to anyone calling for boycotts against Israel. UNHRC elections take place every 2 years. The UN body is made up of 18 experts and meets 3 times a year in New York and Geneva. They are in charge of monitoring human rights developments across the globe. Israel police are searching for suspects of the most recent price tag attack. Israel's Channel 2 reported this morning that unidentified vandals slashed the tires of 30 vehicles and sprayed racist graffiti in the Arab neighborhood of Sharafat in southern Jerusalem early this morning. Price tag attacks refer to acts of vandalism against the Arab community and sometimes also against the IDF, thought to be by Jewish right-wing extremists in protest of the Israeli government's policies towards the settlements and/or in response to Palestinian terror. Today's incident follows another similar attack last week near the Silwan neighborhood in Jerusalem, where a bus was spray-painted with anti-Arab slogans and tires of 16 cars were slashed. Some believe that incident was in response to the stabbing of an ultra-Orthodox man in Jerusalem's Old City, which took place the previous day. That man was lightly injured in the attack. Police are cracking down on such acts of vandalism and are still investigating both price tag incidents. No suspects have been arrested as of yet. A new Gallup poll shows a rise in Americans' positive views of Israel. The poll results announced today showed that of the 1,023 random respondents asked, 72% held a, quote, very favorable view of Israel, which was up 6% from 66% last year. The poll also showed Americans view the Palestinian Authority in a more positive light, with 19% saying they view the PA favorably as opposed to 15% last year. Israel, according to the poll, is the most positively viewed nation in the Middle East, followed by Egypt and Saudi Arabia. The lowest ratings went to Syria, with 13% of Americans viewing it favorably, and Iran at 12%. The Presbyterian Church is responding to controversy over the publication of an anti-Zionist guide. As we reported to you last week, several Jewish groups, including the American Jewish Committee, the Jewish Council for Public Affairs, and B'nai B'rith International, had criticized the church's Israel-Palestine Mission Network's publication of the study guide titled Zionism Unsettled, which brands Zionism as a, quote, false and oppressive theology and compares it to Nazism. The church released a statement following the Jewish reaction late last week, saying the study guide was independently released and that the church has varying points of view when it comes to critical issues. The statement said our church has categorically condemned anti-Semitism in all its forms, including the refusal to acknowledge the legal existence of the State of Israel. At the same time, we believe that condemnation of injustices perpetrated in the name of the State of Israel, including the violation of human rights, does not constitute anti-Semitism. The church also reaffirmed their commitment to a two-state solution and peaceful resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, further saying that the Presbyterian Church continues to be an advocate for a peaceful resolution and welcomes dialogue from within the church and from interfaith partners. Israel's Knesset Committee for Aliyah, Absorption and Diaspora made an official visit to the Jerusalem offices of Nefesh B'Nefesh yesterday in order to meet on the issue of enhancing and promoting Aliyah, or immigration to Israel. Nefesh B'Nefesh works together with the Israeli government and the Jewish Agency to promote Aliyah from the United States and the United Kingdom and make the process easier and smoother. New ways to enhance and increase Aliyah from the U.S. to Israel was discussed during the visit, as well as ways in which the absorption process for new American immigrants can be expedited. Knesset Committee Chairman Yoel Razvazov praised the organization, saying they were clearly invaluable and that it was vital to support Nefesh B'Nefesh's efforts. Several discoveries to tell you about today. The remnants of an ancient village was discovered near Jerusalem, said to be 2,300 years old. The town is said to have been inhabited for 2 centuries during the time of the Second Temple. It was first found last summer while gas lines were being put in, running from Israel's coast to the Burma Road, which is the main entrance route to Jerusalem. Since then, the Israel Antiquities Authority have been excavating this site, and the excavation has revealed several archaeological finds, including tools used for grinding and milling made from limestone, cooking pots and oil lamps made from pottery, and over 60 coins, some of which are from the reigns of the Seleucid king Antiochus III and the Hasmonean king Alexander Jannaeus. The site is being preserved and will be accessible for the public to visit. And Reuters reports that in Russia, 103 Torah scrolls were discovered that had been stolen from Jews in Hungary during the Holocaust. The scrolls were found by Chief Rabbi of the Unified Hungarian Jewish Congregation, Shlomo Kovis, who said he discovered them while pursuing other Hungarian items taken and hidden in Russia in the Lenin Scientific Library in Nizhny Novgorod, which is about 240 miles east of Moscow. Kovis told a press conference held at a synagogue in Budapest that he was confident that the scrolls, now in very poor condition, were stolen from Hungary, calling them a historic find. He said he had initiated talks with the Russians regarding the scrolls' ownership and also had the support of the Hungarian government and the U.S. State Department, and that first and foremost his priority was to get the scrolls restored. Kovis said, "I think it's the first time in history when such a large collection of Judaica, with over 100 Torah scrolls in one place, was discovered," adding, "and the fact that these scrolls are from Hungary has a special significance this year, which is the 70th year from 1944, when most Hungarian Jews were deported to Auschwitz." And turning to our Shalom TV programming for tonight, Wednesday, February the 19th at 8 o'clock, Rabbi David Wolpe of LA's Temple Sinai talks about Jewish life and anti-Semitism today. And then at 9, writer for Facing History and Ourselves, Phyllis Goldstein, discusses anti-Semitism across the ages. Then at 10 p.m., author and former Harvard professor Daniel Goldhagen presents the Dorothy Gardner Adler 2014 State of Anti-Semitism Lecture. That is presented by the Simon Wiesenthal Center and the Museum of Tolerance of New York. That's tonight here on Shalom TV and shalomtv.com. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Wednesday, February the 19th, 2014. I'm Teisha Bader.